Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Krishna. If you're new to the channel, welcome. So this time around, we're going to look at 5 techniques that you can use to overcome art block. And we're going to go through these and you'll be able to see for yourself how you can apply these techniques into your own work. So the first one is seeing in shapes. And you can see here that I have some type of a dinosaur or some type of a creature that's popping out. And if we look very carefully at the way I've drawn this, the base shape is basically coming from this wrench. So I want to go ahead and show you how I did this. First thing I do is I look for the most interesting part within a man-made object. And clearly we can see that the primary shape here is the end point of this wrench. So I'll just go ahead and draw this out. And I'm looking at the silhouette. You don't have to worry about matching just the scale to make it perfectly proportional or anything, but here we go. We've got something like this. And we can take this particular shape, it looks like the dinosaur's mouth, but we can also reapply that to the dinosaur's arm. How? If I make a copy by hitting Command J, taking this other copy and scaling it down, I'm just going to move the hand out here. And so now what I can do is I can use my knowledge of volumetric shapes and create a set of limbs. And I can continue this back, add some scales, add a little bit of overlap, kind of make those lines look a little bit more organic and more natural. Even for this mouth, what I can do is I can take this basic shape and just, I'm going to kind of clean that up. I'm going to make it look a little bit more organic. So I've got, maybe he's having a bad day, so he's a little bit sad. We can see a little bit of the interior of the mouth. We have his teeth. Maybe he's got this really big central tooth. That's got to be painful. And he's got some other teeth. Maybe there's a little bit of spittle, drool. That's one of the things I love drawing, spittle and drool. And so we've got something that looks like this. Maybe there's a little bit of a sense of form underneath his mouth. He has some nostrils, and we'll play with the idea of eyes. I'm going to give him really, really tiny eyes. We want to think about playing with size. So I've got this creature that was created from this wrench. And that's the first technique. Always look at shape and try to extrapolate what that might translate to in your own imagination. All right, next up, we're going to apply contrast through scale. So we've got this beloved orange here. Looks fairly ordinary if we were to go ahead and draw that out. With this orange here, it's really difficult to know how large or how small it is because there's nothing in front of or behind it. We just see this orange on some type of a nebulous surface. And we can really take advantage of that by thinking about scale. So I've got this orange here. What if I were to add some type of a ground plane? And let me zoom in a little bit. And what if I were to make a person who is barely half as tall as the orange? Now we have something that I think looks much more interesting. So we're utilizing a sense of scale. Maybe he's kind of getting ready to take a picture of it with his tiny smartphone. And now we have this idea that this orange is enormous. To make this effect a little bit more pronounced, what we could do is we could have other elements overlapping this object just by virtue of placing a human-like character into the scene. The assumption that one would first make is that the orange is very, very large. So this has to do with applying contrast through scale. Taking something that is normally small and making it appear to be really large by virtue of other elements that are surrounding it. Now, if I put other props surrounding this orange, that could also work. But you want to add something that gives an idea of, like say for example, a bicycle or something that a person can use, and that will automatically give us a sense of scale. If it's not clear, then it's going to be somewhat ambiguous. So that's the easiest way for me to explain this is if you put a person into the scene, there's a supposition that the orange or the object is much, much larger. So you can play with that sense of scale. And you don't have to necessarily make your character super micro small. Character could be bigger, but still maybe not quite as big as the object itself. All right, moving right along. Let's go to something that I really, really enjoy, and that's symmetry. But we're gonna look at symmetry from a different standpoint. So here, you can see that I've created this bear using the Symmetry tool in Photoshop. Other tools like Procreate have something similar. And on the right-hand side, you can see that I've given this bear some personality. I've made some edits to the left image and added some asymmetry to make this look more organic. So how does this work? Well, we're gonna go ahead and start off by using the Symmetry tool. If we have our brush tool active and choose vertical symmetry, it will get this line. We can position this line however we wish. I'll hit enter to commit my change, and then I can just start drawing one side, and the other side is automatically drawn for me. Now, when you use the Symmetry tool, it can be very helpful for things like front views, stuff like that. It can also be great for developing ideas for, say, characters that you may not have considered before. It's just a faster way of working. So in this particular example here, I'm just coming up with something that looks totally different. Maybe this is some kind of a weird creature here. And what I can do now, I can turn off my symmetry, move this over to the left, make a copy, move it to the right. Now I want to make it look a little bit more organic. The image on the left kind of looks like an action figure. I mean, just kind of like dead expressions. There's really nothing going on within the character. So this is where I can come back in and start to play with giving some personality. So maybe I might remove the mouth, add a little bit of asymmetry there, give him a sharp tooth. Add a little bit of the gum line. Add that beloved spittle. And maybe on this side, he's got some kind of eye patch that basically adds an element of mystery. How did he get that eye patch? So I'm adding some asymmetrical elements to spruce this guy up, make him more visually interesting. And now there's an inference in terms of personality. So don't just use the Symmetry tool as is. Use the Symmetry tool as a starting point, and I think you can have a lot of fun with that. Maybe I'll give him some spots here on the side, or maybe I'll have one of the horns kind of broken. These are all elements that give us some insight into this character. We can start to better understand that maybe he has had some injuries to himself, and he's got a broken horn, and he's also wearing an eye patch because of an injury that he might have sustained in battle. So, think about how you can utilize symmetry to give personality, to create a character that you can then apply personality to. And we'll bring that spittle back in. All right, so then moving along, we're going to look at the found object completion. So I created this robot using this Polaroid camera. And what I've done here is I've taken only half of the Polaroid camera, and I'm going to attempt to draw the other side. So typically I can either follow along with the original lines, which I'm going to start out with, but I'm not going to just, make an exact copy. I might introduce some interesting, shapes. Maybe this is going to be opened out like this. I might consider this to be some type of desk or kind of console, sci-fi console. So let me just go ahead and I'm holding the shift key down to get these straight lines. Maybe I've got something that resembles the lens here. And again, I'm not having an exact copy. That's not the goal. The goal here is just to give me something that I can riff off of. It's very akin to if you're playing a musical instrument and someone is throwing in a beat or a guitar riff or something like that, you are simply, adding some notes or some melodies or some other elements to it to embellish that. That's exactly what I'm doing here. So I'll create, say, a set of interesting pipes. Maybe there's like some steam pipes that are here. Maybe there's a secondary screen. There could be some buttons. There could be, levers. And I haven't drawn this before, so this is just, I'm trying to challenge myself to see what can I do to make this more interesting without having to make an exact copy of what I had before. And I'll just maybe add some shading here. So I've constructed the right side by using the left side as a starting point. Now, what can we do with this? Well, so I can take this, I can make a copy, Command J. I can then move this copy over, and I want to flip it horizontally. So if I hit Command T and right click and choose flip horizontal, I could just have it be a perfect mirror like we did with the earlier example with the Symmetry tool, but I think that leaves some options off the table. Instead, what I'm going to do is just drag this in and create a little bit more of an overlap. That to me looks way more interesting. So now I can hit enter to merge those two, and I've got something that could be like a robot face. This almost looks like its mouth, and this looks like its eyes. Or what I could do is I could just take the whole shebang and flip it upside down, use the perspective tool, and now I can construct a top side to this object. And now I've got something that looks like some kind of a sci-fi platform. It could also be the top head of some type of a robot. I can project, say, the mouth or the jaw. I can give it some eyes, and so on and so forth. So this gives you a lot of really great options. I didn't even think that I was going to make a robot with this particular example here. It could be a robot, it could be some type of a opening, maybe it's a palace in some futuristic world. The choice is really up to you. Okay, so that's using found object completion. So let's look at the last option here, pattern to form. And these are some examples that I've created just to show you. I'm using pattern to form here in both of these examples. And you'll notice here with pattern to form, I can combine some of the other techniques that I've shown you, which is, applying contrast through scale. I'm using pattern to form with contrast to scale to create this alien-like structure that's appearing to absorb some kind of a woodland creature into it. So let's see how we can make this work. We're going to start off by just creating some assortment of shapes. And I'm going to make a brand new shape that I haven't made before. Add a little curly Q. And what I'll do now is I'll hit Command J to make a copy, Command T, and I'll move the pivot point in, not all the way to the end, but just somewhere over here, and I'll rotate this a smidge. I'll hit enter, and I'll use my Shift Option Command T. If you're a longtime viewer of this channel, you probably already know this keyboard shortcut by heart. And it's a good one to know, I think. So now I've got this thing that looks kind of like the Eye of Sauron or something like that. And I can use this as is as an abstract design, but I think I'm going to challenge myself a little bit more. What I'm going to do instead is, let me just make a copy. I'll hit Command J, move this copy over, and I'm going to use my perspective tool. I'll pull the corners out. Something like this. And I can then add some type of a top structure, and then I can simply connect all of the ends of the hook with that top structure. So maybe it looks something like this. So I've just created some really interesting, vehicle of some type. Could be a vehicle. It could be something else. We could use our imagination. But this assortment right here can create a really nice starting point. I can make these individual tractor beams, right? And I can add some type of a ground plane, throw in cactus, maybe there's a road, maybe there's some type of a desert mountain type of environment. So now I've got this ginormous object here, right? And I can use this object, let me just make a copy of it. I could perhaps even flip it upside down. And in this case, I'm going to make another copy, Command J, and I can flip it up like this. Maybe scale it down. So now this thing has multiple layers. And I can just maybe clean this part up. I mean, the sky's the limit. So you can literally have something that looks very weird and very alien-like. And this is just using this pattern to form option. I'm creating form because I'm adding some structure to it. But you can see that this almost has this rounded look to it. And I think you can create some pretty cool results. You can always take what you have. Let's just go ahead and have some fun with this. We'll throw in some kind of a beam. And maybe that beam is kicking up some dust. You can really go crazy with that. So those are some techniques that I use when I'm getting stuck myself. I'm curious to know if any of these techniques have resonated with you. What do you use when you run into Artblock? What are some of your strategies that you would like to share with the rest of the audience? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found a specific technique here that was of import or value, let me know that in the comments too. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.